opponents say that we need a stable family with two parents, yet they oppose gay marriage, which in states like Arkansas and Florida means that gay couples that are together providing a stable home and family and income cannot adopt children who are in the foster care systems and bring them into a stable home. So it's a direct contradiction that our opponents argue that children need a stable family and a stable home to grow up in, yet they don't support allowing marriage, allowing unions between two loving couples, or two loving couple, and then allowing them to adopt and bring children into stable families.
All right, for the Democrats, approximately 27% of homosexuals are registered Republicans, most of whom favor same-sex marriage. How then can you rationalize that same-sex marriage is a partisan issue when even your party's leaders oppose it?
Well, you said 27% of all gay people are Republicans, so what does that make the number that are Democrats? Like 73? Matt's very much more. So 73% of gay people, let's turn it around, support gay marriage, and are Republicans. Are Democrats. That figure seems a little high, but let's suppose it's true. That constitutes the log cabin Republican wing of the Republican Party, which I have never actually really understood. The Republican platform and Republican congressmen and senators have repeatedly, off the cuff or sometimes on the record, made some of those horrendous statements towards just the basic morality, like Rick Santorum compared homosexual behavior to bestiality. And yet I've never understood why there would even exist a force of log cabin Republicans. And I mean, it's as if the party wants to strip you of your civil liberties, and many of its members privately, and in some cases very publicly, believe you to be less than human, and yet you're a Republican because you don't like the estate tax. Or my opinion, humanity is more important than the estate tax.
I'm not going to go so far as to challenge the intelligence of anyone that I've never met. But what I will say is that, the issue is again, very clear. This has been a Democratic talking point for a very, very long time. And there has been very little result that the party's been able to show from it. The very fact that, and again, the Republicans are not closed to this issue. This is an issue that Republicans are willing to deal with. That's exactly why at the time for the election, the Senate Republican leadership came down and we were able to meet with them and speak about this issue. But again, we have to go about this in the proper format. Again, this is not something that is popularly supported. This is not something that the public supports. And until we are able to reach that threshold, that's the only way that we can really, basically afford to advance gay marriage.
All right, question for the Republicans. This is a little word. What do you think about stripping marriage from its legal status and leaving it only as a personal, symbolic act without regulation? In this case, civil unions would be the only legally acknowledged unions for all couples, gay or straight. As I decided, this would also help in separating the church from the state.
Again, I've said this is, as a conservative, this is kind of the step forward. How do you provide as much freedom with as limited government? And for one point, I've looked at the Constitution a lot, and that separation of church and state just doesn't seem to make it in there. Maybe my copy's wrong. But one thing that, again, we need to keep in mind that perhaps in the future that maybe that is the solution, redefining what exactly the federal government has to, what the federal government's benefit is from being involved in marriages. I think that actually for the Republican Party in the future to support this issue, that I think we'd achieve a lot more on actually scaling back federal intervention or federal oversight of marriage than we would by creating amendments either for or against anything.
Can you respond? Okay. First of all, Republicans are not going to support gay marriage, at least in the very near future, probably the long-term future, because you would lose the South completely forever. And So, and that's pretty much your last bastion. And you don't really look at the demographics of the current Congress. And so that's why I take great umbrage with your statement that you're a big tent party. It's actually mildly amusing, because at point, I mean, how many minority members do you have in Congress right now? Or in general, really ever, in the last 40 years. But anyway, I'd like to, you talk about wanting to provide freedom. Oh, it seems to be contrary to your original position. You know, I want to provide freedom for gays and lesbians to get married, and yet you sit there opposed to that. I don't see how that jives well with your wanting to provide freedom. You know, I want to expand freedom, and it seems that the forces on your side want to curtail it. You mentioned the Constitution, how your copy of the Constitution doesn't separate church, there's no wall of separation there. That's true. The phrase wall of separation comes from Jefferson's writings, as I'm sure you know. But if I may, the government shall not establish a religion, and that's in the First Amendment.
All right, these will be our last two questions, and we'll move on to 5-minute closing statements from each party.
If you want to allow gay marriage, why not also allow polygamy? Is banning polygamy not also violating civil rights?
Okay, polygamy. This is a great one. Okay, first of all, let's start with the facts. Gay marriage has been allowed in numerous European countries, Canada, South Africa, for several years now, and it has not led to polygamy. There's been no call for polygamy in any of those countries as of yet. So that's just the facts on the ground. I mean, that statement's really a red herring. And secondly, I would also like to say that, I mean, here's a good analogy there is. Gay marriage and straight marriage. If they're apples and oranges, gay marriage and polygamy are apples and jumbo jets. The gulf is so incredibly wide. Polygamy is an inherently abusive marital structure that has already been tried and is continually being tried throughout the world. You know, if you don't believe me, go to Saudi Arabia, go to Afghanistan. You know, in countries where polygamy has been tried, there's an inherent imbalance in equality. Or ask some of those new Adventist Mormons in Utah if you know polygamy is a fair structure. Well, I'm sure they would say they would. There is no evidence whatsoever at all that it would lead to polygamy. It is a fallacy on its face.